gonna now look on YouTube and see if we're actually going live.
We're just talking to each other in our living
He
room.
said he can see us. Oh my
Yay!
gosh, it's working.
Is
This
anybody
is so
watching us,
exciting.
Paul? Is
I don't know,
anybody
Paul, is
watching us?
anybody watching us?
I'm a couple seconds behind here, so I'm gonna have to put on noise cancellation.
He's putting on noise canceling headphones because there's a lag time. Even though it's live, he hears my voice and then hears it on YouTube a few seconds after.
Oh, when I used to do Facebook lives, and there's a lag time there, but I did Facebook lives to like sell things. When I used to sell women's clothes. So people are like, oh, I want that one, but I'm 3 things ahead.
Yes, that must have been so frustrating.
And I'm squirrely. So I was like, what did you want? And people were like, I don't have to buy anything. I just want to see you be confused. I was like, that's nice. That's good.
Yeah. Well, this is working. That's exciting. So now we'll just wait a few minutes for people to actually sign on, or at least we'll wait till 7.
So we think they will sign on.
And then we'll go over each of the topic points. Meg, do you by chance have headphones that work with your laptop? Because I definitely hear like a weird feedback that I think comes from your speaker trying to pick up your own microphone.
Really?
Yeah, it's not the whole time, but it is happening occasionally.
I don't have. Brennan took my headphones to school.
How dare he?
And I have 2 pair of headphones, but none that I know how to link to my computer. That could be. I would need you over here, Becca.
Okay.
Dad, what does it sound like? I don't have any sound here. There's no sound in my.
Yeah.
No. What if I turn it down? Does that better if I turn it down?
Oops. I don't know. Testing. Volume control.
Does it sound better?
It's a little better. Yeah. That sounds good.
All right.
I know. I feel like I'm getting really like techie now. I've got my headphones and my microphone.
Oh, I have a microphone. Right, I tried to do voiceover stuff, so I have like a little closet with pillows, and that's where we play our Minecraft. Well, Brennan plays Minecraft, and I
give commentary.
Yes, which is hysterical because I have no idea what's happening.
I really need to go watch it. It reminds me of this YouTube channel that I used to watch. Forget exactly what it was called, but basically it was a guy who would play video games, and his girlfriend would comment on the video game, and she knew nothing about video games, and it was the best.
That's exactly what's happening. Like Brennan had a lead for the llama, but when it's like just on the ground, I was like, "Is that a turd? Does like Minecraft have turds?" And he's like, "No," and I was like, "Oh well." So he's like, "It's a leash mummy," and I was like, "That's not what that looks like."
That is not what that looks like.
It is not what it looks like.
Oh, this is really cool. So Paul just somehow figured out how to send me a chat.
Yep. I can relay any questions if folks have them.
So he can put the questions in there.
So you can see the chat.
Oh, we can see the chat from YouTube. What? This is the coolest ever.
It's cool, but I don't think anybody's going to chat with us. Only because I feel like, people find
Well,
it?
I've never
been on live. I've never watched a live on YouTube.
I definitely know at least one person named
We want
Kina. Kina, she's a new BCBA. Her and I have been talking on Instagram.
So you could get her to go this way?
And
Not this way?
Yeah, exactly. She already was going that direction on her own. She has a lot of really great ideas about ABA and how to make the field better for all the kids.
And the hard thing is ABA is so strict and in a box that every time I hear I'm BCBA and I have to do it this way, that when you have new ideas, as you know, that's not, you can't jump outside that box. You get put right back in or you lose your job. It's really been, that's what I see. I don't know if that's always, but I mean, I am in school every day. So
yeah, no, it's really hard, especially I can't speak from the school district part because I never was a BCBA in a school, but doing it in the clinic setting was really difficult because of all the restrictions from insurance. And you really, like, you had this very strict template you followed, and the template was made based on the DSM-5 criteria, which I don't know if you've read the criteria for autism in
Oh,
there, but
I'm trying to poke my
it's
eyeballs out,
just
yep.
yeah, it's just deficits based completely.
And
So
I
all of
would
your
try to
goals had to be based on those deficits,
yeah.
and the exact verbiage was remediates symptoms of autism. As if, you know, it
Oh,
was cancer or something and you had to cure it.
oh boy.
Yeah.
And, like, if there was a strict, like, thing I had to follow, I would not do that. I'd
Yeah,
be
it
like, "Well,
was
that feels wrong to me, so I'm not doing it," and it feels wrong to the kids, so I'm not doing it.
mhm.
That's
Yeah,
why I always say that
that's
I'm
where I got by the end of
trained
it.
not traditionally in behavior, because really if you're trained traditionally, you go the BCBA route, and I was like, "Oh, I'd have a headache in day 1." I try to fight the rules the entire time.
Yeah.
I can't
And
even go to a 2-hour workshop.
no, it's a lot of jargon. It's,
So
like
much jargon.
the pass rate for the BCBA exam, only 60% people pass it on their first try.
Why? And
Yeah,
then I sit in IEP meetings where the BCBA is using this jargon, and I was like, "Do you know none of us know what you're talking about?"
right.
And of course, I'm the one who has to say something. I was like, "Nobody knows what you're saying."
Yeah.
And then I'm like, "Can you tell us in, like, not the jargon?" And then they try to tell us. I was like, "Nope, that you didn't
Nope,
you didn't
still
even come
jargon.
outside the box. You're still saying it." But they don't really know, right? Because you're so trained in to use those words. So I get it.
Yeah.
But if I don't know and I'm in the behavior field, I promise you the parents don't know what's
Yeah,
happening.
exactly.
And the
No, and
classroom
that's how
teacher
I
doesn't know.
feel about I mean, really, that can I feel like happen from almost any provider at the IEP table. It's like
Mhm.
OTs talk their OT jargon,
Yes.
BCBAs talk their BCBA jargon, speech talks their speech jargon,
Yes.
and then the poor parents or guardians are just trying to take it all in
Yeah.
and feel so intimidated and like they don't know their own kid because that's what everyone at the table makes them feel by talking in all these
Yes.
jargon laden ways. All right,
And
we are officially past 7.
we're past 7. So I
Should
think we
we
should just start, and
we
then I
dive
mean,
in?
if it's gonna be on your
Yeah,
thing
it's gonna be
forever.
on there. I think it's good. You wanna just start with brief introductions? I think most people, if they got here, they probably know us, but just in
Yeah,
case they don't know us or they know one of us and not the other.
right.
Do you
Do I
wanna
go
go
first?
first, Meg?
Oh,
Jeez.
I'll go first. I'll
Okay,
go first. We
okay.
won't play the "You hang up first. I love you
You hang
more."
up first.
My name's Meg, and I am a certified behavior consultant. So I hang out with the kids that throw chairs, swear, strip naked, pee on the floor in childcare centers, preschools, public schools, private schools, and I am different than most people who help with behavior because I go to your home. I don't have an office. You're in my office right now. You're in my living room. My other office is in my car, and I go to the place where the child is having the hardest time at the time they're having the hard time. So if a parent says to me, "Oh my gosh, my son has such a hard time at dinner," I'm not going at 3 in the afternoon. I'm going at dinner. Right. So I see, because I want to swoop in, help as much as I can, give you all the information, then I want to swoop out. I don't want to be there for years. I'm doing it wrong if I'm there for years.
Right. Yeah, you wanna put yourself out of a job, basically.
Oh, and I try every day to put myself out of a job. And the way the world is going right now, you
It's
and I
gonna
are
be
never going to be out of a job,
yeah,
unfortunately.
it's gonna be a while.
Oh,
No, that was a really good way to describe it, and I love that we've connected because
oh,
our paths to behavior were different but the same. Because I don't think you mentioned that you were a kindergarten teacher first.
oh yeah.
You
10
taught
years. I
in
was
the
a kindergarten teacher
classroom
for
for
10
10
years.
years. Yep.
Yep.
So Meg and I have that in common. I'm Rebecca Beaudet, Becca, for those of you who don't know me. I also started in teaching, but I was in special education. I did that for 5 years in public school. Figured out that I loved all the same type of kids that Meg described
Yes.
earlier, the kind of the kids that um, other
That's
people
right.
were like, I'm not sure what to do.
Mhm.
They're disrobing, they're going to the bathroom outside of the bathroom, swearing, hitting, biting, throwing furniture, refusing to engage in any part of their school day. And I always loved working with and supporting clients that were engaging in those behaviors. And I was fortunate to work with a really amazing special ed director in Sunapee who told me about ABA and about registered behavior technicians. So I went and did that training. This is before I knew anything about ABA. I just heard, hey, a strategy to work with the kids that I already love working with. Great. So that's how I started in the field, and it just sort of evolved from there. I wanted to do more and more with behavior, and I didn't really know there was this alternative track that Megg took. So I took this traditional track of, okay, you're a registered behavior technician, RBT, and then next logical step, if you want to keep going and on that track, is to become a BCBA. So I left public school teaching and I went to work in an ABA clinic. And I was in that setting for about 3 years. And there was just a philosophical and ethical mismatch that over time, that kind of valley expanded and grew, and I didn't know how to reconcile it anymore. So that is where the Calm Collab was born. I started my own business the beginning of this month, and my hope is to consult with families and schools and kids to better support children with disabilities, to better support neurodivergent kids, and just do things that are right for their interest and their strengths and their unique needs. And Megg and I met kind of way back when I was in grad school. Megg presented at UNH, but she keeps forgetting because it was a while ago.
I don't even remember coming to a classroom. I'm not going to lie. I tried to rack my brain, and I don't remember ever doing that.
It was on multiple intelligences. You did a presentation on multiple intelligences and how to set up your environment for different kind of learners.
Who was your teacher? Maybe the teacher will ring a bell.
I don't think it was for a specific class. It was for, I was in a grant program called EC Seat. It was Early Childhood Special Education Assistive Technology Grant, and you came in as one of the like mentor presenters for our like cohort. You really did, I promise.
I know, but I don't remember that at all. Okay.
Yeah, because you graduated from UNH too, right?
I did.
Yeah, so we have that in common as well. And we both have an early childhood background. So I don't know, different but the same. Like we came from a similar place and took really different behavior paths, but eventually our paths crisscrossed again because we're both kind of going against the grain and speaking up for kids. Like when we see harmful practices,
uphill, Becca.
Yeah. Sifting through this maze and being loud for love, your hashtag loud for love. And so that's what brought us to this YouTube Live tonight. Megg and I have been collaborating on different topics around behavior and reinforcement and just kind of red flags that you might look for in the behavior field or educational setting. So tonight we're going to go through a series of, 12 red flags.
12. I knew there were 12 actually.
12 red flags. We're gonna
that's the tip of the iceberg. There's probably 4 million.
Oh, yeah. We're gonna tip of the iceberg. But this was my my word vomit list that I sent Megg in a direct message. I was like, here's my idea for tonight, Megg. So we're gonna talk about each red flag, why we've identified it as a red flag, and then what you can do instead, or what you as the parent or the practitioner working on the team, like what you can advocate that the team try instead. And know that when Megg and I go through each of these, I can't speak for Megg, but at least for me, I am not immune to having made these mistakes. There are red flags on this list that I've done.
I taught kindergarten with a degree in communications. So I could sell like media space, advertising, marketing space on the radio. That's what I had a degree in. So when I taught, I got hired because I was funny and the kids loved me. That's as far as it works.
I can see that. You are funny, and I would imagine kids love you because I love you. And I love kids. So.
But I didn't get it based on like knowing what I know now.
Right.
When I left teaching to go into behavior, I didn't even have the right language. I just knew that what I was doing was working.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't have like any sort of language or systems or strategies that I could like put under umbrellas anywhere. I just was kind of like, I just know it works. I don't
Right.
know why. And now I know why.
Yes.
I had to go back to school to know why.
Yeah, and I even having just finished a graduate certificate, in March of 2021, that's when I finished my ABA grad certificate. None of this was taught. I've talked to several BCBAs, and we've all noticed how problematic it is that there aren't really like alternative ideologies taught in your course, and none of our professors or guest lecturers are autistic adults. So we're not really getting both sides of the argument or the philosophy at all. So some of these red flags I didn't even know were red flags until I'm talking like 3 to 6 months ago. And then some of them I kind of always felt strange doing the practice, but I couldn't articulate why. I'm like, something about this isn't right to me, but
Yeah.
I don't know why it's not right to me.
Mhm.
And it
They don't, people don't take it as a reason if you're like, but it feels like it makes my
right,
heart hurt and my belly
right,
roll. And
right.
people like get over it and come on.
Mhm. Yeah, and it wasn't until really starting to listen to the autistic community,
Mm-hmm.
that I started being able to have language to that kind of funny feeling in my stomach and heart, like, "Oh, that's why it felt bad."
Right.
And then the autistic community, I'll be forever grateful to them,
Me too.
for showing me things that I didn't even know should be hurting my heart or stomach yet. Um, and I remember being really defensive at first, starting to see posts about ABA coming out on Instagram and TikTok, like, oh yeah, it's creating PTSD, and
Mm-hmm.
these are ableist practices, and this disrespects body autonomy. And at first, my reaction as a human being is to be defensive, to put up this wall and think like I'm different. No, the clinic I work at's different. We don't harm kids. No, we don't do that.
Right,
Um,
right.
and the more I heard it, the more I let my walls down and was able to start reflecting and growing. So I just want to give that message to our viewers that we've both come from a place where we've made mistakes and done harm. And the first step is starting to acknowledge that. And, the quote that many of our kind of colleagues in our circle say, when you know better, you do better.
Yeah.
So if you learn something in this live tonight that you can go and do in your own practice, in your own therapy or education service tomorrow, that's what we hope. Just that you learn one thing and do something better each day.
My goal for every workshop I ever do is to see, think, and act differently. I want you to see things differently. I want you to think about things differently, and then I want you to act differently based on what you see and think.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's such a like direct way to say it. It's
Yep.
perfect.
And if right, we always say if you know better, we can do better. But sometimes, and I was defensive at first too. So, right, because you don't want to think you've been doing the wrong thing, things that are hurtful.
Right?
So you can only do better when you know better, but you can only know better when you listen. And
Yes.
sometimes I can only imagine for you, I know to be a BCBA, it's a big to do and there's a lot of school and it's expensive and it's really rigorous and really hard. And then you're like, wait, I just did all that
Yes.
and now I'm not supposed to do this?
Yes.
What? And I don't think anybody gets into the field to give kids PTSD and hurt them.
No.
I don't think that was I hope wasn't the intended. That wasn't intended, but that is what happened.
Right.
And I know when people fight me, I said, you know what? I'm neurotypical. You don't have to listen to me. But
Right.
how many autistic or ADHD or neurodivergent communities are you in? If you're not in any, you should get in some because you're going to hear the same stuff that I'm saying, but I
Right.
don't know if it means more to you because it's coming from someone who's neurodivergent.
Absolutely. Yeah. No,
Right?
I think that's a great point. That it's really difficult to do, but it's so important in our practice, whether we're talking about the practice of being a parent or being a teacher or some other type of specialist, that we get out of our echo chamber.
Mhm.
and listen to diverse voices. It's only going to make us better.
And I tell people in workshops, I say, okay, so how many people are parents? And they'll raise their hand. I said, how many people are not parents? And they'll raise their hand. And because I am kind of feisty and sassy, I say, so the people who aren't parents, you're missing a piece. The
Right.
only way to get this piece is to have a kid of your own, not to babysit, not to be an
Right.
aunt or uncle, not to I don't nanny. It is to have a child, because I taught kindergarten for 10 years and I did not have Brennan. And I would have said I did not judge the parents. Then I gave birth to Brennan and I thought, oh, I judged the parents for like 10 years. Because
Yes.
I can't possibly know what it's like to be a parent when you're not one. You can't
Mhm.
possibly know what it's like to be neurodivergent when you're neurotypical. So
Right.
I need all the information given to me, and I hang out in chat rooms and I hang out in people's feeds, and I listen to their lives, and I have to get all that information. And I realize that because I always choose love, right? Be loud for love. I always choose love-based strategies that if they don't fit in the toolbox and they're not working, we could take them out and there's no emotional wellness piece at stake. I notice when I choose love, I'm neurodivergent affirming
Yeah.
every time.
Right.
It's when you choose fear that it gets a little squishy.
Yeah. Whenever
In
you
the
put the
quicksand.
kid first, you can almost never go wrong.
Right.
And you're likely being affirming to whatever group that child belongs to if you're putting the child first.
Mhm.
Um, let's dive into our red flags. So the
Okay.
first
Cool.
one identified was using and relying heavily on physical prompting. So we know that this is a red flag because it ignores body autonomy. It doesn't presume competence of the children we're working with.
And I don't want someone to do it to me.
Right, and it disregards tactile differences, like, some people just don't like the sensation of touch, and then it also promotes this unhealthy idea around consent and dissent. Um,
And as these kids get older and they've always had their physical pieces, then what does that set them up for in a
yes.
adult relationship with a significant
Mhm.
other? The
Absolutely.
autistic community says it does not set you up well or nicely.
No, for lots of different reasons.
Right.
So, I think, um The impo the important part that I really wanted to touch on tonight, because I know you and I have talked about red flags in some of our other lives, was
Right.
this third piece. Besides identifying them and why it's a red flag, we're doing this third piece of saying, "Well, what do you do instead?" Because that's usually the next question people ask us, and
Oh, wait.
it's not a cut and dry answer. The things that you and I suggest tonight, it's not one size fits all. It's just like, well, here's some ideas to explore.
Yeah.
But it's going to be really individual to the child, or the adult, the team that you're working with. But some alternatives that I have found to the reliance on physical prompting, doing a lot of modeling,
Yeah.
where we're just modeling the task using visuals, whether it be like a task strip or a video of you doing the same task that the person can watch, modifying whatever tool the person's using so they can use it more independently. Like, I know a lot of people will do hand over hand for like feeding programs, and they have amazing technology, low tech and high tech. They have, silverware that's bent at a 90-degree angle so someone can hold it themselves without flipping the spoon. And
Mm.
there's modified pencils and keyboards and paper. So if we think about ways that we can change the tools so that we don't have to touch people. They don't have to use the same tools as everybody else. They have to just use the tool that works for them. Do you have other thoughts, Meg? Like other alternatives to
Um,
physical prompts?
yeah, I have to write them down, right? Because my squirrels that live in my brain.
Do it.
So people always ask me, Becca, well, if I can't do whole body listening, if I can't do this, if I can't do that,
Mhm.
what do I do instead? And I always say that's the wrong question. The right question, I think, is what new information do I need so I know what to do instead?
Yeah.
So the new information you need is like, right, you need to dive into these, right, autistic communities, right,
Yep.
to really find out how hurtful it is, because that's the new information. So you're like, oh, if it's hurtful, I'm not going to do it.
Mhm.
Right. rule in the classroom should be not keep your hands to yourself, but ask before touching. Because so sometimes when you ask,
Right.
the child will let you. The more you
Absolutely.
build the relationship, the more apt they will say, okay, you can go hand over hand. But it can
Yes.
be as simple as, right, hand over hand can be very helping somebody. I would grab, because I'm left-handed, their left hand. So it could be something as simple as I grab their left hand to do whatever we're supposed to be doing when they're
Mhm.
right-handed,
Yeah.
right? So it could be something as simple like that, as where it's like, I'm not hurting them and it's not really a big deal, except it is a big deal.
Right.
And if I'm mad or getting escalated and you touch me, I'm going to feel like a caged bear. So I always say, if someone said, if you had 3 wishes, what would they be? I said, oh, I would always ask for more patience. Because if you're going to wait them out,
Yep.
meaning we're going to modify a tool, or we're going to like wait for the processing to happen, or we're going to ask the question, can I help you? And when I
Yes.
mean help you, I'm going to put my hand over hand. You have to now be patient for an answer, and it's
Mhm.
going to take time. And just because they say no today doesn't mean they may say no tomorrow. So you can ask
Right, right.
again tomorrow, because maybe the relationship's a little bit stronger tomorrow, right? So
Yeah,
time and
a
patience is
relationship.
always something that we need to work on. Always.
Absolutely, and that relationship piece, you're so right, like, anything you're asking of a child, like, you can't really ask until you've built that relationship, that connection, the rapport. um I liked what you said about that there are times when it might be appropriate to use hand over hand, but it's important still that we're asking because of
Yeah.
that consent and body autonomy piece. And that was one of the shifts I had made towards the end of my time working in the ABA clinic was all of my behavior plans. If there was some sort of program that might require hand over hand prompting or like touching to help someone with maybe like their pants in the bathroom or anything where you would be touching the client, I would write explicitly in their behavior plan that you had to receive consent or assent before you began, and if there was ever a verbal no, discomfort in body language, moving away from you, you were to stop immediately because
Right.
that child's withdrawing their consent.
It,
And
it seems so sad that you have to write that in a behavior plan so people won't touch kids when they don't want to be touched. But
yeah,
that's immediately when kids start to fall apart. That's immediately when adults do go over and touch them
touch
and
them.
hold them. You know how
Yes.
many places I've been where a child has come in screaming, and if you just calm your body, we could go back to class. And they're like holding them and like holding their hands. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness. Right. Where I think we're going to get to that, because that's right.
Yeah.
We get
Yeah,
to
but
that. That's
they're,
another
like,
red flag.
so dysregulated. I just took a great crash course from Jessie Ginsburg,
Mm,
the sensory SLP, and she talked all about, how people can have too low or too high of sensory arousal, and unless you're right in that optimal zone in the middle, you're really not available for connection, communication, or learning. And I think about that with the touching. Like for some kids who might be hyposensitive to
mhm.
tactile, like them being touched, that's just going to dysregulate them so much.
So much. I
Or
love
being
Jessie, by the way.
sorry, being hypersensitive to it. That they're going to be so dysregulated by that touch. So just another thing to think of is sensory differences when it comes to physical prompting.
Right, because
Uh,
some kids want you like bear hugs, and some kids that feather touch, they're like,
uh-huh.
like, don't touch me like that.
Absolutely. I feel like each of these could almost be an hour-long workshop.
Oh, for sure.
I like how, elaborate we can get on each one. The second one was social goals that aim to make someone appear more neurotypical or less
Oh,
autistic.
that one
Um,
hurts my heart and my belly.
yes, this one is a red flag because it promotes masking and
Mm,
compliance.
right.
It may increase anxious or depressive thoughts for our students,
Oh.
and it puts the responsibility on the disabled person to change. What should we be thinking about as, a new way of thinking and new strategies? Instead, we should be thinking about advocating for neurodiversity affirming goals, which would look at things like self advocacy and teaching all the kids, not just the neurodivergent child, teaching everybody that there are different learning styles and different communication styles, and none of them are inferior or superior.
Right.
They're simply just different styles.
Right.
Because how many times have you seen, Meg, like an eye contact goal or
Mm,
conversational turn taking that really completely disregards a whole group of communicators who might not have direct eye contact or who might connect through what the autistic community calls info dumping. So instead of this back and forth conversation, you talk a lot in one chunk about a special area of interest. So I
mhm.
think it's important that in our social goals, we're teaching kids those different styles and that one's not right or wrong and you don't need to do one. But if you want to, because there are times when our neurodivergent students might want to try to communicate a different way to connect with a different person, we
Right.
teach them both ways. Like, you can do this, but you don't have to if it makes
Mhm.
you feel uncomfortable. Your way of communicating is just as valid.
And I think in a classroom, we need to make sure that everybody knows that they get their needs met the way they need them met.
Yes.
It's not. It's like if you need your met, and that happens in a house too. Like, so I can't, right, parent my kids the same. No, you
Mhm.
didn't. You didn't give. Even if you gave birth to twins, they might be temperamentally different, right?
Yes.
And we don't ever want 100% compliant. So at about 3 years old, you're about 60% compliant on an adult directive. So if you say, come on, we're going to go change your diaper, and the kid follows you 60% of the time, you're doing it. You're like, you're there, right?
Yeah.
4 years old is about 70%. 5 years old is about, wait, 4 years old is 80%. Yep. 5 years old is 90%.
Yeah.
5 years old and older. We only want 90% compliance. So the hard thing with ABA and all the things I talk about with stickers, tickets, tokens, points, and clips is that that expects 100% compliance. You only move up 100% compliance. You only get a sticker with 100% compliance. You only get
Right.
a token on a token board for 100% compliance. And I was like, and that sets you up as an adult to get hurt.
Right. To be
And
a
that
peep
is
to
all
be
over the
people
autistic community.
yeah, to be people pleasing, to have
Yeah.
increased anxiety,
Ugh,
to be disappointed when you miss that mark because no one's 100% on all the time.
no.
And there's times we want our kids to say no. There's dangerous situations where they need to be able to say no.
Right.
Um,
And the adult's not always right. So the adult could be
absolutely.
doing things that the child should be saying no to.
Right.
And I think as they get to be adults, when they have not practiced that no, when they have not been able to stand up for themselves, when they don't even have the words to use, if they don't know they can leave the situation because we haven't
Mhm.
taught them any of that,
Right.
we are setting them these children up to be adults that struggle. And I think a lot of autistic adults would agree with me that they've had to really learn different things as they were adults that they didn't realize because nobody taught them when they were children.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, I think we kind of led into another one because we were talking about compliance, and that was
Mm,
one of our other red flags was tracking noncompliance as a behavior to decrease by 100%. And we both said 100% compliance is scary.
so
It's
scary.
not realistic. Um,
And there's some
and
temperaments I'm like, I think I'm still only 70% compliant.
and
And when I
that's okay.
hear things and someone's like, you don't have to. I get things sent to me every day, like, look what I found. And I'm like, oh, I'm not capable of just leaving it alone.
Mm,
Right? I then have to go in and say something because I'm just like trying to give new information, right? And I some temperaments just are not going to be 100% compliant. They're not going to be 90% compliant. They just right. I see
yeah,
obstacles and I'm like, what? I don't think so. And I just jump over them.
yeah. I think the more important part when you're doing goal writing instead of a compliance goal is to think about how can you teach that person to advocate for their no.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, of course, you don't always have to give an explanation. Like, sometimes you can just say no, and people need to respect your boundary. But teaching kids to put a little something behind their no can be helpful in self-advocating. Like, are
Yeah.
they saying no because it's really hard and they need another tool? Are they saying no because they're starving and they wanna have a snack from their lunchbox? Are they saying no because 'cause they're really sick and they need to go to the school nurse? Like, helping them identify what their bodies and brains need, so that the adults can swallow that no more, because that's more on us, right? Like, we're having trouble
Yeah.
swallowing that no. Like, oh, the kids are just supposed to listen, and no, they're not.
And they
uh,
have the kids, when they say no and they maybe put something else behind it, they have to trust that we're going to take the no. That
yeah.
I hear this all the time in schools. Like, I'm going to use one from a child care center I heard the other day. It's time for you to go to the bathroom now, okay?
Mm.
And then the kid says no, and what happens?
It's
Well,
time
you
to go to the
made an
bathroom.
adult directive a question. You gave this
Right.
kid who is motivated by challenge, choice, and control a choice. He said no, and now what? But now you have to go to the bathroom, but you've entered a power struggle you can't win because you can't make poop and pee come out of a kid. So I just was like, oh my gosh, what's
Right.
happening right now? But now that you gave a choice, the kid and the child said no, but you made the kid do it anyway, but now you're in a power struggle. Does he trust that when he says no, that no is the answer you're going to take?
Right.
That should be a goal, because that not only is for us to figure out, but the kid to figure out. But there's a self-regulation, self-reflection piece for the adult for sure.
Yes. I liked what you said about the choices too. Like, you made it a choice, because I think that there's a mistake that happens. I've seen it in teaching, but I saw it a lot in ABA, where even things that you couldn't make someone do, like go to the bathroom, you would give an illusion of choice, thinking like, well, they have to pick one of the choices. Even if they picked one of the choice, like, oh, do you want to go in the upstairs bathroom or the downstairs bathroom? Even if they pick one of those, you still can't make them go to the bathroom. So
No.
you're putting choices where choices aren't going to help.
And right, the choice is not within parameters, because they could still be like, well, I'll go and fight you in the but I mean, they hear it as, do you want to fight me in the upstairs bathroom, or do you want to fight me in the downstairs bathroom? And we
Right.
have to flip our head, right? Eating, sleeping, going to the bathroom, and talking. We have to flip our brain to, I can't make a kid do that. Don't
Right.
enter a power struggle. If they are going to say no, and I am going to make this relationship work, and they're gonna trust me to take the no, then I can't fight over those things.
No, and you just have to pick your battles. What I would supervise some of my trainees, and I would tell them, like, when you're giving a demand, the demands really should only be about physical and emotional safety.
Mm,
A lot of the other things, as far as I'm concerned, they are negotiable, between you and the child. Like, you can find toys and work activities and strategies that you can both live with. But when it comes to safety, those are the real demands you put in place. You're not going to let a child run in a parking lot with moving cars, and
no,
you're not going to let them jump off of, a 15-foot structure, because they'll break their leg. Like, those are the demands you're really going to stick to. All the other things really should be choices that
right.
you're making together, as it's age appropriate.
And
Uh,
even if you have kids that can't respond, little kids or kids that are nonverbal that don't respond, you can still give the choice. And I think if you know the kids well and you've built that relationship, you know which one they want. Especially
Absolutely.
if you like, right, or showing them
Hold
things, or
objects, yeah.
yeah, you could definitely tell, right?
Yeah,
And that's where time and patience comes in, because sometimes it take a while to figure that part out.
absolutely. Yeah. A third red flag, well, I guess technically fourth, because we've skipped around a little bit, but behavior goals that target decreasing or blocking of stimming.
Oof.
And we talked about this ignores body autonomy, disregards sensory needs, um,
Yeah.
and promotes masking.
And we just teach, well, kids who stim a lot, I think other kids have questions. So instead of stopping the stimming, because right, we stop the stimming. This is an old school thought. We stop the stimming because they look weird.
Right, or they distract others.
Yes, but why can't we talk about that to the kids? Say, oh, when you're what does your body feel like when you're nervous? When you're really excited, what does your body do? Well, your body does that and his body does this. So, right? Ask
Yeah.
him about it, check in with him, talk about it, make it not weird. It's when we like try to stop it and don't let kids do that. And then we make this huge deal of it. That's when it's weird.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think a lot of kids are just kind of like, oh, I wonder about that. And then if we just tell them what they wonder, then it's all done. We don't even have to have another discussion about it. Oh, when he does that means he's really happy. Oh,
Right.
when he does that one, I've noticed he's frustrated. So maybe when you see that, you could check in with him.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah,
he
it's
needs a
creating
friend.
that community so that they can support
Right.
each other. And you know,
Yes, I mean, that's a big one.
they're
Is,
meeting a sensory need, right?
yeah.
I just connected back to that course that I just took. Like a child can be engaging in stimming to regulate being too low of a level of arousal or too high. And you're right, it ties in with a lot of different emotions. So we don't want to block and invalidate someone's emotional and sensory needs.
Was that one you took with Jesse?
Jesse Ginsburg, yeah.
Yeah. Was that a Zoom one? Was it like
Um,
recorded and?
Yeah, it was on Zoom, and then she recorded it and put them in a private Facebook group. It was kind of interesting. It was marketed for speech and language pathologists and speech and language assistants. Um, but I was like, I like doing transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary stuff, so I'm just gonna kind of sneak right in there. And so I did, and I didn't think anything about it was only applicable to speech paths. It was like, how do you make sure that the child you're working with sensory needs are being met so that you can connect, communicate, and learn with them? I was like, yeah, that's applicable to every single person who interacts with children.
I've been to a lot of OT conferences because I think I should. I tease myself sometimes thinking I'm going to go back for OT because I think I'd be good at it.
You would
But
be
there's a lot
amazing.
of science, and I'm like, oh. So, but I've been to a lot of OT conferences, and they're like, and I'm always the only behavior person there. I'm like, oh, well, I'm actually a behavior consultant, not an OT, and they look at me like they don't know how to like fill out paperwork or give me a certificate. And I was like, and just like you said, there's nothing that I've been to that's just an OT thing.
Right. Yeah, and of course there's certain like protocols that I understand people have to have specialized and extensive training. Like I'm not going to go and write like an OT or a speech evaluation and
No,
try to
right.
do speech or OT therapy, but there are general strategies that even colleagues you work with would say, "Hey, this is what we did during our session with the child. Can you carry this out in the classroom?" Like there's
Right.
a lot of things you can carry out just being part of the team, even if it's not your area that you studied exclusively. And I liked this workshop, and I think that was Jessie's mentality too, because she knows, even though she was marketing the course to speech and language pathologists, she knew that before she started this program, there weren't really programs out there like that for speech
I remember her
pathologists.
saying that, right? She's like
Yeah,
the only one.
yeah, because she was going to all these OT trainings too and was like, "No, these could be used in speech sessions as well." So I don't know, we're getting kind of,
Oh,
on one of our little side paths, but it's just to say, like, it goes back to what we said earlier about getting out of our own echo chambers. I love, working for myself now because I see the whole world as my colleagues now.
yeah, right.
Not just this tiny little, like, you're in a school or in an office, and those are the only people you get to collaborate with about kids and about practices. You can open up this whole world and talk to different disciplines, different races, different ages, all walks of life.
Yeah,
Uh, I know you and I just did a bunch of videos on um, LGBTQIA plus community. Like it's just really great to be able to amplify voices in different communities and collaborate with them and gain new perspective. Like I really love that part of
me too.
of
And I
what.
think it's really tricky for SLPs because speech language people, like, you are doing the thing that you can't control. Your whole job is trying to get a kid to talk.
Mhm.
Kid doesn't want to talk. There's not much you could do besides keep working on that relationship. So
Right.
maybe next time it'll be better.
Yeah. And I think that that's a great shift that the field I've seen anyway, like any speech paths that are advocating on social media, that's an amazing shift that I've seen happening where they're like, yeah, throw out the lesson plan. If
Mhm.
you need to hug the kid the whole session, like hug in a loving way, not like hold them down, but like if you need to hug them and rock them because they're having a bad day, like that's okay.
And you might be the only adult that's doing that.
Yes, and it pays dividends because down
Oh,
the
yeah.
road when you do get to a place to work on the speech and language goals, like, that kid trusts you and they want to talk to you. Uh,
Right. And
yeah,
you'll be their power of one, right? It only takes one caring, loving, kind person to make a difference in a child's life.
absolutely. That is a really good segue to our other red flag of ignoring multimodal communication because we just talked all about
Yeah.
communicating and speech. If we ignore multimodal communication, we're promoting this narrative that vocal speech is superior and it's the only way to talk. And this can lead to unmet needs of a child, lowering their feeling of self worth,
Mhm.
making it harder for them to make connections. What could we be doing? What could we be shifting to? We want to honor all modes of communication, and this can be tough. I know for me, when I first met a child that was an AAC device user, I had no idea how to use it. I didn't know how to model it. I didn't know what to do with it. It sat on the kid's desk. They didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what to do with it. I'm not saying that this is easy and something that anyone's going to learn overnight, but you have to try. You
Yeah.
cannot just expect every child to use vocal speech and have that be the only way. Even,
And they say, isn't the statistics that only 20% of your communication is in speech and 80% is in body language? So then why are we writing goals that say we should be using that we're only going to accept verbal speech? Well, that but that's not the only thing that's received, right?
right? Yeah, and even people who primarily do communicate with vocal speech, there are still times of crisis where you might be minimally speaking or unreliably speaking and use a different method. There are a
Right.
lot of autistic adults who have talked about that they primarily use vocal communication, but they still love to have like an AAC app or the ability to do text to speech when they're in like a moment of crisis. So I
Right.
think just always modeling and accepting different types of language, whether it be like eye gaze, signing, gestures, approximating vocal words, even text to speech written, like people writing notes to you. I had a preschooler I used to work with who he would write on a whiteboard. And he had the ability to make vocal sounds and words, like his vocal cords, everything worked so that he could do that, but he preferred written communication. And it wasn't until we stopped expecting vocal speech that we even discovered that for him. One
Right.
day, because he had a PEX book that he didn't really use, but on the back of his PEX book was a whiteboard. And one day when the bus was driving away, he had written "bye" on the whiteboard and held it up to the
No.
window for his para. And we all were shocked. We're like, he can spell, he can write, but we never gave him that chance. We just waited for him to use vocal speech or magically love PEX. We just were forcing PEX on him. And it's like, well, that wasn't his mode of communication. And writing wasn't inferior. As soon as we accepted that writing was just as valid, he started communicating on his whiteboard with his para. And it was amazing.
You would have been so good in the 80s. Remember when I used to have to, like, we used to write notes to, like, friends and then, like, tuck it behind their chair? He would have been awesome at that,
Yeah, fold
right?
your note in, like, the little football and flip it to your
Oh,
friend.
yes.
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 Um, yeah, and there's so many great advocates online right now talking about the different modes of communication. So I would encourage anyone interested to dive into that world, follow some speech pathologists, AAC device users, particularly get into any kind of chat or social media page that's talking about echolalia and delayed scripting.
Our
There's
girl Boho Speechy. Where do you want
yes,
her?
yes, Katya. Follow
Yeah.
Katya, the boho speechy. Yes, just learning about how scripting is a way to communicate. And this is not new information. This is research that was done, I believe, in the 70s by Marc Blanc. And they're not teaching it in grad school still. They're only teaching, language processing, how most of us think of it, where it's like the child says like "ba," and then they say "baba," and then they say "bottle." That's only one way that people develop language. They also can develop it through scripting, and that's not news. But for some reason, it's just now making ground in speech pathology and in special education. But I think that everyone should be part of that conversation, especially if you work with any autistic children, students, clients, because many autistic children do script. And sometimes it's to meet a sensory need, but oftentimes it's a way that they're developing language. And if we're ignoring that and not honoring that, then we're ignoring their communication and we're being a roadblock in them developing stronger communication.
And maybe college will catch up, but college is not caught up in behavior either, because we're still teaching Skinner and stickers and tokens. So we're not caught up there either.
No. Oh, that was actually perfect. The next one was about echolalia. Red flag if your child's in a program and the program teaches ignoring or redirecting of echolalia or scripting. Again, this ignores communication and it limits connection and emotional safety.
Yep.
Instead, we should be looking at if this child might be a Gestalt language processor. And this is a common and natural way to learn and develop language. There are ways to explicitly teach next steps with scripts. Again, I'm not a speech path, but there's a lot of great content online about this. So I'd encourage people to take a peek. There is a really good podcast too. Megg Proctor of Learn, Play, Thrive. She has a podcast called Two Sides of the Spectrum. She has one episode in particular about echolalia and Gestalt language processing. I highly recommend to anybody. It's a good starter point to understand that topic a little bit better. Red flag number 7, I believe. Again, we went out of order.
Oh gosh, I have no idea.
I think we're on number 7. No documentation or policies for safety and excessive use of restraint or seclusion.
Oh, I see that so many places. And the seclusion rooms are always named something. I was in a school one time in the seclusion room. Are you ready, Becca, what it was called? The hokey pokey room, where you went to turn yourself around.
That's interesting.
And it was a white room with no natural light or windows or fresh air or anything. And I thought, if you put me in there as an adult, I still wouldn't feel better coming out.
Right, I would escalate. That was my exact experience as well. The 2 seclusion rooms that actually the 3 seclusion rooms that I've seen in places I've worked were white walls, bare walls, either no windows or windows that only went out into like another room or hallway, not like an outside window.
Yeah.
And then usually like really hard tile, cold floors. And like if it has a piece of furniture, it's like a deflated beanbag with like 3.
Oh my gosh, that's the one in the hokey pokey room. Was
like
a maroon vinyl beanbag that if you sat on with shorts, you wouldn't be able to get off your body. And it had like 4 beans left in it.
That's terrible.
Well, it was just like the beanbag outline. It wasn't really like a
yeah, just the skin of the beanbag.
Yeah. It was
beanbag
like
was the shell of a person.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. I'm trying to see what else we said about.
I always get this question too, like if kids are having a hard time and their emotions are big and they're physically external in anger, that I always get the question, well, what do we do? And I was like, well, you keep everybody safe, right? There's a safety piece, but then we're going to work really hard and self-reflect. How do we not get there again?
Yes, proactive.
People want me to come in and be like, how do we hold kids appropriately? I was like, oh, you are asking the
No.
wrong girl. You're
Right.
asking the wrong girl. I'm not coming in and teaching any of that business.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah,
I truly believe that if we really look and we really self-reflect, that there's a point when we won't get there.
I would agree. Having been trained in 2 crisis management, uh, programs, protocols, both that had restraint as part of it, I just wondered, like, how we even got there. There's so many steps you can do proactively, and there's even a lot of steps you can do reactively in worst case scenario before you would ever go to restraint and seclusion.
But
Uh,
Becca, you have to stay inside the box. If you come outside the box, that's where you get proactivity. That's where you get the additional strategies. If you're
yeah,
not willing to jump outside that box and you have to follow the protocols in your
mhm,
box,
right.
that's how we get to seclusion. That's how we get to holding kids.
Yeah, and I think that, the restraint and seclusion piece, you and I know a lot about the emotional and physical harm that can come from it,
Oh, yeah.
and
Mhm. For
at
the person that you're holding and for the person holding.
Mhm.
I mean, I've
Oh,
seen
I
adults get really hurt.
yeah, my, Instagram live that I did with Cassie from Kind Connections
Mm,
last week, um, I got teary-eyed talking about it. I unfortunately, this is one of the mistakes I've made in my career where I have put hands on kids when I thought it was the right thing to do in that
yeah.
situation for
And
safety.
probably necessary and appropriate, you thought too, right? You were like, well, I'm keeping them safe.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and in 2 of the situations, I look back and I still feel like I don't know what I would have done different. It was severe self-injurious behavior that
Mm,
was happening in 2 out of the 3 situations. So I really was preventing serious physical harm from happening. But in the 3rd instance, there were so many other things that I could have done. I didn't have the tools.
yeah, yeah.
Mm, and so I think that we really do have to think about it before it happens, because if you're trying to figure out what the tools are when the child's already in crisis,
Oh,
and you're starting to be in crisis, because no matter how level-headed and calm you are, I promise you, you will never be ready for that moment when you have to decide if you're gonna put hands on a child or not. You will never
right.
be ready. It is the hardest decision to make, and you're making it when you are already so heightened.
Yeah.
So
And
I
you probably feel terrible afterwards.
I came home and I remember the last time that I had to use restraint on a child. I came home, I laid flat on the floor and I sobbed.
No.
And I still, like I said, I if I talk about it too much, I'll start getting teary-eyed again. It just knowing that I could have caused further physical harm by mistake, because it's not easy to do any holds on someone who's in
No.
distress. They're not sitting still. It's not like you're hugging them and rocking them. They're fighting because they don't wanna be held.
And
Uh,
sometimes the kids are bigger than you and
Sometimes
stronger than you.
they're bigger than you.
And some kids get so mad that they're stronger than you, even when they're 3 or 4.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the part that I wanna to hit home is it's not comfortable to look at, but I would encourage any person who works somewhere that does use restraint protocols to please look at the laws around restraint in your state and look at the fatality that has come from
Yeah.
restraint. It's hard to read, it's hard to know that that's happened, but I think it's so important that people read about that and know that it's happened so that they don't willy-nilly use restraint.
Yeah, right.
Uh,
Again, get more information so you know what to do instead, right?
yes, and,
Mm.
we talked about the restraint and seclusion being a red flag, but, to kind of part 7A, it goes with that, is places that aren't transparent about it and don't provide good documentation. So
Mhm.
for any of our viewers who are joining from New Hampshire specifically, because that's where Meg and I practice, so you know that restraint is legal in
Yep.
our state, unfortunately, as well as seclusion, but there are laws written about it. And I would encourage people to read it. You can Google it and find it right online. If you are an educator, you can get this lovely uh, rules and regulations special ed booklet from the Department of Ed, and it outlines it in there too. It's something that I go back to often in my own practice because if you work with neurodivergent populations, they are more likely to get restrained. Children with disabilities and
Mm.
children in minority groups
Yes.
get restrained more than other kids. Also, children who have communication disorders get restrained more often too. So I just would encourage you to look at the law, look at reports from restraint gone wrong with fatalities.
Oh
And also
gosh.
really know, if you work in a place that does use those practices, really know what the documentation is and be really transparent with families. As I said, I did work in settings that used it. I would always tell parents when their child enrolled, if your child goes into crisis, this is the protocol we are trained in. And I would actually ask the parents, can I touch you? And I would model the holds on the parents, because I do not want the parent to hear about the hold for the first time when their child was already in it.
Right. Oh gosh, right.
So you have to be transparent if you have to use these techniques at all. I hope none of you ever have to, but if you do, really knowing your responsibility around it and knowing the laws about documenting and informing parents and guardians, so important.
I'm
Uh,
trying to think of all the kids I've ever worked with, and I'm sure I'm missing some. One is I can think of one that I had to put my hands on, and I was at his house with his mom, and his mom, I said, "Can I help?" And she said, "Yes."
Mhm.
And it was a violent situation, so we were keeping ourselves safe and the child safe. But other than that,
Yeah. I mean, it's rare. It should be like absolute last resort.
yeah, yep.
One of our other red flags, we said therapists or practitioners are not required to complete extensive trainings. The people spending the most hours with children in these settings, they don't often get offered a lot of support or training. Uh,
I got so mad about this one because paras are the
mhm,
ones who spend the most amount of time with children, and they are never invited
to anything.
to anything that I've even, and I shouldn't have to do this because I do make a living doing workshops, but I've given up. I said, how many paras are coming? How much would it be for the paras to come? And then I've given up my part of my salary to make sure the paras could come.
That's
I
just
shouldn't
wild.
have to
That's
do that.
wild. No.
And it's, I'm gonna say, I think the most it's been for me is $200. I said, well, I'll do it for $200 less then. But why am I giving up the $200? You're a school district. You can't find $200
Right.
to train the para?
To right, to pay the people that spend the most contact hours with the kids.
But then you get this from the schools. Oh, but it's outside of their time allotment. I
Mhm.
said, all of them said they want to come. They
Right.
all said I want to go.
Yes. Yeah. I've had very similar
Yeah.
experiences to that. And
Oh,
that red flag was not to say anything on the paras or the entry level therapist or the
no.
assistants. We want them there, and like you said, Meg, most of them want to be there.
Yes, they do.
And it's concerning that this bigger structure that's in place really limits their professional development and learning opportunities. We want to give them tools to fill their toolbox. They want to do well and support the kids they work with.
Yes.
Um, we have another red flag when a team does not collaborate with other teams or team members.
Oh boy.
Children are whole beings, and they exist and interact in this complex network of people and settings. In order to teach to the whole child, part of that is being able to observe them in different settings and talk to the many different people in their life.
Childcare and preschool teachers get left out of that all the time.
Yes. All the
time.
time.
Childcare people are my people, and they get left out of it all the time, constantly, and they're like, "We count."
Yes. Yeah, I
Right?
think there's such a stigma around it, because there ends up being this unnecessary divide of, "Oh, I have this degree," or, "Oh, I have this title," and it's like,
No.
"No, we're all at the table
For
for
Johnny.
this child." Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and all of our voices matter and add input that can support him or her.
And
Um
when I say I taught kindergarten, people are like, "Oh," but I taught kindergarten in a childcare setting, not
Mhm,
in a public school. So people go, "Oh, oh." And I automatically lose, right? I have a master's in education,
and they take away
and
your credibility.
it was cool when I was a public school kindergarten teacher, but my master's in education doesn't count when I was a kindergarten teacher in childcare.
That's crazy to me.
Yep. I get such a different reaction.
Yeah, no, and that's really sad.
Yeah.
Um,
So childcare people are my peeps for sure, and they get left out of everything.
yeah, I think you're right. Childcare providers, paras. I
Yes.
know in the ABA clinic setting, and I know this wasn't across the board for every company, but for the company I worked for, the RBTs and therapists, they were never invited to meetings. It was only ever the BCBA, even
Right.
though the therapist are who works the most hours with the child. As the BCBA, I would supervise 10% of that child's hours for the week.
Yeah.
10%, that's it. And then the person who was with them, 90+%, they weren't invited to the meeting.
And if I was the BCBA and I went to the meeting, I'd be like, duh, I'd be nervous. Like, I don't actually know the kid best. I don't know why I'm here.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's in some situations that experience is better, and in some situations education is better, and it's really not that black and white, and it really should be this collaborative process.
Right.
I know this is kind of a red flag part A that's attached to this one, and you brought this up in one of our other lives, Meg, is not only the unwillingness to collaborate, but a school or a therapeutic setting that won't let you come observe. You
Oh,
want to talk about that? I know this one grinds your gears.
it sure does. So I have had 7 families that have go to this one public school in my area, and I am
Mhm.
not allowed in the public school. Not just because it's me. It's not
Yeah,
me as a person, like not me as Meg, but
right.
like outside people aren't allowed in. And we're like, why?
Interesting. Yeah,
Because you would see it's a privacy issue. And I'm like, I'm not allowed to tell people names and information and like
anyways, yeah.
but uh there are some schools that I have to be chaperoned, which is always funny to me. Like I have to have a guidance counselor like chaperone me, or the behaviorist chaperone me.
Oh
Other
boy.
ones, I just go in, I sit in the classroom, no one really cares that I'm there, and then I leave. And then
Mhm.
other schools don't let me in at all. And I was like, but the parents would like help. You're
Yeah.
not helping. I got I'm on a case right now where the parent needed help from the school.
Mhm.
The school didn't know what to do. So the school said, find a behavior person. She did. I was a behavior person.
Yeah.
And then they wouldn't let me in the school.
Interesting.
So okay, so how am I supposed to help?
Yeah.
So I went in and went in and talked to the kid for half an hour in the vice principal's office, like out of
His natural setting.
yeah. And I was like, I wanted to see her in the classroom, but okay. But
Yeah.
because I know what I'm doing, I like figured it out. And now I'm invited to the meeting, but the meeting will be on Zoom, and I'm not gonna. I'm sitting in the office with kids going by me all over the place. I was like, but I'm seeing the kids right now.
Yeah.
Look at I'm seeing kids.
Right.
Everybody who comes in here to pick up kids, to drop off stuff, the mailman, they all saw all these kids.
Right, and I don't buy that either, because
No.
when classrooms have, like, the parent or the grandparent that comes in to volunteer
Or read
or
a
you have
story.
or you have a chaperone for a field trip, they all see the other kids. There's just this understanding, sometimes even paperwork you sign that's like, no, you're going to be confidential of what you see and hear. And I know that that's what you do as a professional.
Yeah.
So it's wild. So yeah, red flag if team members will not collaborate within their own team or with outside teams, and especially if they don't let people observe. And I'm not just talking like not letting Megg or I into the school. If they don't let the own parent come in, that's a huge red flag. Like
Yeah.
parents, you have the right to observe your child at school and in their therapy setting.
Yeah.
Another red flag we have, not using strengths-based approaches,
Mm.
putting the responsibility of change on the disabled child, disregarding their interests.
It takes
We-
two to tango. It
yeah,
can't always be the child's fault 100% of the time. That's not even possible.
no, doesn't even make sense. And
Without not sharing the power and control when you're the adult.
I think the strengths-based thing, strengths-based approaches, I don't think any person in the field is like, "Oh, I wanna use deficits-based approach."
No, I don't yeah, they don't know what they don't know, I think.
But yeah, and I think it's this bigger broken system like we've talked about before. It's like if you look at a treatment plan in ABA or if you look at an IEP in special education, there's a teeny tiny section that talks about strengths, and the rest of the document is like deficit, weakness, goals, deficit,
And the
weakness.
strength part, I don't know if you'll agree with me, is usually disingenuous.
I
Becca is a wonderful young lady who I'm like, who talks like that?
Yeah, no, I actually felt that way recently. So I consult with parents now. A big part of what I usually get hired to do is review IEP drafts before the meeting and put my notes all over it so parents feel empowered of what to say so that they feel like they can be heard in a meeting where there's a lot of jargon and they have the right feeling and the right gut, but they don't always know how to say it so the rest of the people at the table hear and understand it.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, the last two meetings that I attended, it was the strength section was more a list of interest, which is great. Like you do want to acknowledge a child or a student's interest, but I wouldn't say that that's necessarily their strengths. To say that they like Play-Doh, that's an interest. It's not a strength.
Right.
Um, but perhaps saying that they're a hands-on learner or that they are really proficient at communicating with their AAC device. Like those are strengths. You don't want to just say things that they like. That's not really understanding who they are as a learner. It's just like, oh, they have preferences. So, well,
And
we
it's
all
really short. It's like 2 sentences usually.
yes. So I talk about with parents and guardians when I meet with them, like really bulking up that section. We sit together and we brainstorm for a long time and we make what I call a can-do list.
Mhm.
And I forget who I heard that exact term from. It was someone on Meg Proctor's podcast, but just making a huge list of all the things your child can do. And then once you make that big list, picking like the top 5 that they do the best, and those are their strengths.
I do
And
this kind of is it backwards? It's a bug and a brag list.
oh
So
yeah,
what bugs you about the kid? That's usually really long. That's usually the IEP and all those things are made from. And
right.
what's the brag list? And then I challenge you to interact with the kid through their brag list, not their bug
Yes.
list.
I
And
love that.
the brag list should be in the strength part. What can you brag about? Like if you've never met this kid, what sort of things? And I have to tell parents that a lot because parents will come right in. I'm like, okay, so what's going on at home? And they go right into the bug list. And I was like, you should start with the brag list. But they just are like, well, I have an hour. I got to tell her all the things. And I was like, I get it.
Yeah.
But I want to like paint a picture. And I'm hoping if someone was to describe me, it wouldn't be all bug.
Right. Right. And if you only have this list of bugs or deficits, and then
Yeah.
you go to work with and meet the child for the first time, what do you have as a jumping off spot to build rapport and connection with them?
Yeah, and when I taught kindergarten, there was a lot of like homeschool journals, which I have a kind of a hard time with because they become dumping grounds for negative behavior. Do you want to
Yes.
read our? Do you want to, or if I go into schools now, do you want to read our notes? Do you want to read? No, I don't want to. because I
No.
promise you the notes you took were not brags. They were
Right.
bugs. And
Right.
as much as I try to turn that off in my brain, it's like human nature to like interact with what I just read.
Yes.
So I just said, no, you know what? If I have questions, I'll ask, and then you can give me those. But I'm going to start without them.
Yeah, no, I love that. And then I know that you do this a lot, Meg, including children in the plan. I think we can figure out a lot about a child's strengths by asking them. We don't
Is that
often give
weird?
kids that opportunity, but they
That's the
know
easiest
themselves
strategy.
really well. That's a great strategy, right?
My mom still thinks it's funny that I get paid to ask kids what they need, and then I put into a, then I make or do what they said, and then that becomes the strategy. My mom's like, why didn't someone else just ask? I was like, I don't know.
Right. Yeah, the kid should be getting that paycheck, huh?
Right, and I'm working with right now, she's 9. It's the one I met in the vice principal's
Mhm.
office for half an hour.
Yeah.
And I wrote the ISP, the individual support plan. And then I said, this is just a rough draft. You have to go and watch these workshops with the little girl, and you have to read it to her. And she's
Mhm.
allowed to make any changes, take stuff out, and add things.
I love
And the
that.
little girl goes, Mommy, it's perfect. I just need, I want to let them know what teachers I do like that I can go to.
I love that.
That was the thing she added. Otherwise, she was like, that's great. But the mom was so appreciative that I let the little girl have a say, have a voice in what, I mean, don't you want to have a voice in what's being done to you? And
Right.
we do it with kids, but if you don't ask them, you're doing it to kids.
Yes.
And that's how we
Yeah.
end up maybe with restraint or big emotions or bad relationships or right.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that looks like we have 2 left. One of them is quick,
Okay.
because I know we're getting over an hour now. We'll do these last 2 kinda speed version,
Speedy.
if that's possible
Yep.
for you and I.
I know.
Um,
We'll
so
try.
number 11, red flag, recommending excessive or limited hours in a one-size-fits-all fashion.
I've been on both sides of that. That's
Yes.
that's one of my big problems with ABA is it's 40 hours a week. I was like, there's some weeks I don't work 40 hours a week. We're gonna make the 3-year-old work 40 hours a week.
Mhm. Yeah,
And 40 hours a week of what? Compliance and masking? That's
right, and the
really
40
detrimental.
hours the 40 hours is typically one size fits all for early intervention age children, and
Yeah.
then they give a very limited amount of hours to the older kids because apparently they don't deserve or need support.
Or they should have already learned it. Like
Right,
I have a lot of people that say, well, shouldn't they know that already? I said, well, do you think 15-year-olds know how to read? And they're like, yeah. I said, I bet some don't. But just
right.
because they're 15 doesn't mean they know how to. They
Yeah,
only know how to when we teach them the skill to do it.
we need to remove that word out of our vocabulary, should,
Oh, yeah, we do.
right? Because
Mm.
no one should do XYZ. It's just like, okay. There's not a one size fits all for anybody, so we can take should right out of there.
Yep.
Um,
I feel like there was a bumper sticker saying around that I might have to think about.
yes,
I
for sure. I
like the
said
last one. I remember the last one because I said, yeah.
yeah. The only other thing I had to add about the recommending too many or too few
Mm,
hours, I said really what what we should do is find a balance. Like see what really works for that child and that family and know that it doesn't have to be set in stone. Whatever
right.
you recommend, try it out and check of signs of distress when a service is added or removed. If the child is not sleeping or sleeping too much now or not eating or eating more, starting to bite their nails, doing a behavior you've never seen, like maybe that therapy is too much or too little or not the right fit. So just really reading the cues from the child and adjusting as needed.
Imagine, Becca, we could be flexible.
What?
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 You
We
could
ask
like
kids to do it
try it
all the
out
time.
and then you could just adjust it.
Yes. We ask kids to do it all the time. We've got to be flexible too.
When adults are not so much.
And the last but not least, Meg's favorite, drum roll, please. Number 12, red flag. We've always done it this way.
I just did a did I do it?
You puked in your mouth.
I puked in my mouth, but I did a reels on this.
Yes, you did.
Because if we if we're still doing the things we've always done, we'd be bloodletting and using leeches and frontal lobotomies and electric shock therapy and peg legs. We'd have peg legs. We'd have eye patches. We'd have, because those are the things we used to do. And then how we started, if you know better, you do better. Well,
Yeah.
but this is the way we've always done it. Well, that's my other hashtag is ruffle then shuffle. You need to go.
I love it.
Just because we've done it that way doesn't mean it still needs to happen. But again, we need to get new information. And I feel like the hard thing is teachers want us, you and I, doing our jobs, to tell them what to do instead. And they want it to be one sentence. They want it to be something they can craft or make or put their hands on.
Yeah, they want to print it off of Teachers Pay Teachers.
Oh, if you're going on Pinterest, Etsy, or Teachers Pay Teachers, you're doing it wrong in the behavior field, for sure.
Yeah, and this is not to say anything bad about teachers. I know why they're asking for the easier fix, because they're burnt out.
Oh,
They're
of course.
They're under-supported, underpaid, overworked. So Meg
And
and
they're
I,
taught these things in school.
yeah.
When
So
they
Meg
go
and
to
I,
college,
we're not blaming you guys at all.
no, because Becca and I both did them. I did sticker charts. I had I can't even, it makes me want to cry. The red, yellow, green clippy thing. I had all that because I didn't know. And when you don't know, you look it up. And I pulled out books that I had from school and notes I had from college. I learned those in my master's level classes.
Same.
Because I don't have a bachelor's in education. I have it in communications. Yeah,
and it hasn't been that long ago that we were in school, and you and I both. It really hasn't been that long.
No, but I was longer than you.
Right, but it's not like it's forever and ever.
Not like 70 years ago.
And we go to professional development, right, to keep up our endorsements and our credentials, and even the stuff that's coming out in current professional development. I had Katya from Boho Speechy posted a horrific screenshot of a training that she was in the other day where the presenter was comparing a child's intelligence to a goldfish and talking about kids needing to sit down and be quiet like a dog. So it's scary that it's, 2022 and those are some of the professional development that's still being offered. So we don't blame people. It's not easy. You're searching for something in your limited time with your burnt out, under supported energy. And it's hard. It's hard to sift through all the stuff, and you don't even know what you're paying for. Sometimes you sign up for a workshop and a course and you have these high hopes, and then it starts and the presenter compares kids to goldfish.
If I was in that, imagine, Becca, I was in that, because I couldn't stay quiet. I wouldn't be able to stay quiet.
No, she did a really nice job drawing some attention to that in her Instagram stories. So hopefully that presenter and the person who accepted the proposal had a learning journey.
I hope so. That's terrible. Sit still like a dog. Have you ever seen? My dog does not sit still. I don't know what kind of people have dogs that sit still. I don't have one.
I think training the kids like you would train a dog. It was really horrible. Yeah, super. Yeah.
Ugh.
Anyways, to end on a high note, Meg, is there two things?
Oh no. Okay.
So people I know are gonna try to pick something from today's live to think differently about and act differently, because that's what we both hoped for.
Yeah.
Do you have two go-to workshops or books if people are like, I'm thirsty for more after today's live, what's the next step to change my thinking and actions? What would you tell them? Two books or resources?
So one would be my own workshop, Love versus Fear. Amazing and great. And the book that I always suggest is Punished by Rewards by Alfie Kohn.
Yeah, those are good.
Always.
I love it.
Yeah, what are your two?
I know. I'm like, I put you on the spot now. I'm like,
you would think you had them if you asked me the question.
You know how I am. I pre-planned. That was so spontaneous of me. I really love all of the webinars I've done on Meg Proctor's Learn, Play, Thrive website. She often posts free, shorter versions of her classes. I think right now they have 3 or 4 webinars that are like 30 to 45 minutes that are teasers of her full course, but the teasers are free. So go watch those. If you like what you see, you can sign up for the full course. And then I guess suppose I should plug for myself too. I mean, that's you got to, right?
If you gotta be
I just
president, you gotta vote for yourself.
yeah, I just started an online learning platform. So if you go to my website, www.thecomcollab.com, that's COM for com, and there's an online learning portal now. So people can pay
I did
a
not know
monthly.
that.
Yeah, it just launched a couple days ago. So you pay a monthly membership and it gives you access to a catalog of videos, and I'm going to be adding new videos each month. It also gives you access to interviews that I'll be posting in there with other practitioners and professionals and parents. And then I also will it gives you access to a private Facebook group where I'll post different handouts and PDF files to all my presentations. So that's new and exciting on my website.
Wow, my squirrels like, oh, that's a great idea. And then I was like, oh, I don't have any ducks for any of that business. Right. My social media girl does that too. And I'm like, I should do that. And I was like, oh, that's a lot of, you can't just start that and not add to it all the time. And I'm really good at things at the beginning. And then it starts to like trickle down, and I need a duck to help me.
Yeah, the adding to it is definitely the hard part. I had to set some goals and boundaries around that, and I'm really thankful. I don't think we had any people joining us live yet at the very beginning of this, but my husband Paul was helping Meg and I set up this call, and I really have to shout out to him. He might still be listening on the YouTube channel, but my husband Paul Beaudet, he is amazing. He's helped with like he made this call happen, and he makes all my techie dreams come true. So he's the mastermind behind my website. He makes it so your subscription gets you access to the videos. I have no idea how any of that magic works.
Magic. My website guy, he's like, okay, so I did this. I was like, Adam, you do not have to tell me. I'll just pay you the money. How's that? Okay?
Yeah.
To me, it's magic. I just want you to be a genie. It's fine.
No, and that's how I feel, except poor Paul doesn't get paid. I'm like, well, I guess I'll do the dishes tonight.
Well, now you might have to do laundry too.
Thank you. I did see some people did join us live. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it said we had 3 people who joined us the whole time.
Woohoo! The whole hour?
Yes. So thank you to our 3 diehard fans. I think one of them is Paul. So thank you to my husband and the 2 other diehards. I hope that some others will join for the recorded version. And thanks for.
Oh, and if you watch it, the 2 people who watched it, or if they're still on, I am able, and I do give out professional development hours. So if you were a teacher and educator and you were like, oh my gosh, you just watched this for an hour and a half, then I would give you a certificate for the hour and a half, because Becca and I believe that there's a lot of workshops and information out there, and we believe this is just as good, if not better, than some of the ones we've been to and seen. So
yeah,
we thank you, and it will count for professional development. And if it's recorded and you watch the recorded version, you have to watch it all. I'm not going to check. I just feel like you're going to be honest.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I'll have to check in with you another time, Meg, how you do that for people. Cause
I know how to do it. Yeah.
I would like to do that. And also thank you to you, Meg, because
welcome.
I love our like growing brave technology collaboration relationship we have going on from the very start, where you were like, hey, do you want to be in this collaboration with me on Instagram? And I'm like, I don't know how to do this, but sure. And now here we are tackling YouTube Live, and I love it.
I can't believe the how far you've come in a month, because it was like a month ago that I said, will you do this reel with me? And you said,
I didn't know how to do it.
And you said, I've never done any reel or digital media. And I was like, well, that's kind of where it is. So you might want to learn if you're going to, and you're like, I'll do it. And I thought, first of all, that's really brave of her. And then now you're like, have a portal and a treasure chest and mermaids and unicorns. It's like, I don't
I mean, we are unicorns, Meg. We are.
We are.
Not only
You were
was
the
I
first
brave
one
with
to dress up.
technology. Yeah, I was gonna say, not only was I brave with technology, I think
You
we have
dressed as a
something like 600 views on that video, and we're both dressed in rainbow unicorn.
No, more than 600.
Oh, I don't know. Something crazy.
We have thousands.
Thousands.
Yeah, we do.
All right. Thank you again, everybody. Especially thank you to Meg for hopping on this call and always being part of this wild journey with me. And thank you to Paul for listening to me scream for an hour while I learned how to use YouTube Live. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have an awesome night. Bye.